Welcome to your deep dive. Today we're going to be digging into the world of plant pathology.
Wow.
You shared with us this really interesting research article on advanced disease management in agriculture, and we're really excited to kind of break it down with you.
Absolutely.
What is it about this topic that you find particularly interesting?
Well, I think, a lot of people don't realize how vulnerable our food supply actually is. And so, this article is talking about all these cutting edge ways that scientists and farmers are, learning to protect that.
Right. And that's what's so crucial about this, because the article right from the beginning emphasizes what a huge threat plant diseases are to global food security.
Exactly.
And it's not, a small thing. This is something that could really disrupt,
it's a big deal.
What we eat.
Huge ramifications.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop at the farm either.
Right.
Plant diseases, when they hit, they impact food prices and availability, even political ramifications.
Yeah. It's true. It really makes you realize just how interconnected everything is.
Yeah.
So how are scientists tackling this challenge? Because the article mentions traditional methods like visually inspecting plants for disease, but that's got to be incredibly difficult.
It's incredibly difficult, like finding a needle in a haystack.
Right.
And that's why this research paper is so interesting, because it looks at things like molecular techniques like PCR and NGS.
Okay, so those sound pretty complicated.
They are really cool.
Can you break those down for us? What do those acronyms even stand for?
Yeah, so PCR stands for polymerase chain reaction.
Okay.
Basically, it's like a genetic magnifying glass.
Okay.
So you could take a tiny sample from a plant, a leaf, or even the soil, and analyze its DNA.
Wow.
And identify a specific pathogen, even if it's present in really, really tiny amounts.
So you don't have to, spend hours with the magnifying glass looking at the crops.
You're saving so much time and effort.
That's incredible.
And that early detection is key. Because if you can catch these diseases early on, you can prevent major outbreaks.
Right.
And then we've got NGS, which is next-generation sequencing.
Okay.
Which takes things even further.
So if PCR is a magnifying glass, what's NGS?
NGS is like a super high-powered microscope.
Okay.
That can sequence the entire genome of a pathogen.
Wow.
So we're talking about getting incredibly detailed information about the pathogen, which is crucial for understanding how it's going to evolve.
Right.
How we can develop effective treatments, even track the spread of a disease across entire regions.
So we've gone from magnifying glasses to genome sequencing.
It's amazing.
It's incredible how technology is playing such a huge role now in something as, like farming, which we think of as being very traditional.
I know, it's really cool to see the convergence of these ancient practices with cutting-edge technology.
It is. And speaking of which, this article also mentions using satellites and drones and GIS mapping to track disease.
It's like 21st century farming, right?
Yeah.
It's incredible. We can monitor massive fields from space or with drones, and we can spot potential problems before they're even visible to the naked eye.
So it's like an early warning system.
Exactly. It's like having a bird's eye view of plant health.
That's amazing. So you've got this early warning system in place, but what happens when a threat is detected?
That's where integrated pest management comes in.
Okay.
IPM.
So tell us a little bit about that. What is that?
So IPM is basically a multi-pronged approach to disease control.
Okay.
So instead of just relying on one method like chemical pesticides, we're using a combination of strategies to keep those pesky pathogens in check.
And that's good for the environment too, right?
Absolutely. Moving away from just relying on those harsh chemicals is a huge win for the environment and for human health.
Right. And the article highlights some really fascinating examples of this, even just using crop rotation, which is a very...
I love crop rotation.
Yeah.
It might seem like such a simple thing, but it's so effective. You're basically disrupting the life cycle of these pathogens.
Yeah. So if you've got a fungus, for example, that only eats strawberries...
Right.
And you suddenly plant corn the next year.
Exactly. Out of luck.
It's not going to survive.
No, they need those strawberries to thrive.
Right.
So you're essentially changing the locks on the door.
I like that. That's a great way to put it.
And then you've got this whole other fascinating area of using nature against itself.
Yeah.
Which is biological control.
Right.
We're using beneficial microbes and insects to combat those plant diseases.
So like ladybugs.
Ladybugs are a classic example.
Yeah.
They're like a gardener's best friend because they eat aphids.
Right.
Which can be so damaging to crops.
It's like a microscopic ecosystem war out there.
I know, it's pretty amazing.
With the good guys battling the bad guys to protect our plants.
It's true.
That's incredible. So IPM, it sounds like it's about finding that sweet spot between using the right tools at the right time, but also minimizing our impact on the environment.
Finding that balance is key. And it requires a deep understanding of the complex interactions within those ecosystems.
Right. What about chemical treatments? Are those completely off the table with this approach?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
The article emphasizes that they still have a role to play, but it's more about using them strategically.
Okay.
So not just widespread spraying, but targeted treatments only where and when they're absolutely needed.
So minimizing the harm.
Exactly.
While maximizing the effectiveness.
Precisely.
Okay. And it's great to see that sustainability is such a key focus here.
Absolutely.
But I think the question a lot of our listeners might have is, if I'm not a farmer, why should I care about any of this?
That's a great question.
Why does it matter to me?
And the answer is simple. It impacts everyone who eats.
Right.
Because these advances in plant pathology aren't just about saving crops. They're about ensuring that we have enough affordable food for a growing global population.
Yeah, it's easy to forget how complex our food supply chains really are.
Exactly. And if those chains are disrupted, the consequences can be really far-reaching.
And speaking of far-reaching, the article also mentioned something called disease forecasting.
Oh, yeah.
What is that?
It's fascinating.
Is it like a weather forecast, but for crops?
It's exactly like a weather forecast for crops.
Wow.
They're using data analytics and even machine learning to predict where and when disease outbreaks might occur based on weather patterns, soil conditions, historical data.
So they can say, like, watch out for blight next month.
Exactly. You got it.
Wow.
It's remarkable. And what's really exciting about this is that it allows farmers to take preventative action.
Right. Instead of just reacting after the fact.
Exactly. Which is always more effective.
That's amazing. What other advances in this research stood out to you?
Let me think, bud. One area that I find particularly fascinating is the use of nanotechnology in plant pathology.
Wait, nanotechnology?
Whoa, right?
We're talking like tiny robots now fighting off...
Sounds like sci-fi.
Microscopic bugs.
It does, but it's becoming a reality.
Wow.
Scientists are developing these nano-sized sensors that can be applied to plants or even embedded in the soil to detect pathogens in real time.
So they're like invisible little hives.
They're like little guardians, constantly on the lookout for trouble.
Wow.
And because they can transmit data wirelessly, farmers could potentially receive alerts on their phones the very moment a disease is detected in their fields.
So we're talking about like next level early detection here.
It's incredible.
But this technology could revolutionize how we manage plant diseases.
Absolutely. And it's not just about detection either.
Okay.
Researchers are also exploring how to use nanomaterials to deliver targeted treatments.
Targeted treatments? How does that work?
So imagine tiny microscopic capsules that only release fungicides, for example, when they come into contact with a specific pathogen.
Wow, so it's like a tiny little missile system
Exactly.
for plant diseases.
That's a great way to put it.
That's incredible. This is very promising, but are there any challenges in developing these types of technologies?
Oh, of course, with any new technology.
Right.
There are always challenges.
Especially when you're talking about something as, potentially impactful as nanotechnology.
Right. One of the biggest challenges is making sure that these nanomaterials are safe.
Right.
For both human health and the environment.
We don't want to solve one problem just to create another one.
Exactly. We don't want to create unintended consequences.
Right.
So a lot of research is focused on developing biodegradable nanomaterials.
Okay.
That break down safely after they've served their purpose.
So that's reassuring that that is something that researchers are thinking about and actively working on.
Absolutely. It's a major area of focus.
Okay. Are there any other challenges facing the field of plant pathology more broadly?
One of the biggest challenges is just the sheer diversity and adaptability of plant pathogens.
Right, because they're constantly evolving.
They're constantly evolving. They're master mutators.
Right.
Always finding new ways to overcome our defenses and spread to new areas.
So it's like a constant arms race.
It really is. We're always trying to stay one step ahead.
Between the scientists and these microscopic invaders.
It's a never-ending battle.
Wow.
But that's also what makes plant pathology such a dynamic and critical field.
Right.
There's always something new to discover, new challenges to tackle, and the stakes couldn't be higher.
And it sounds like we need all the brilliant minds we can get working on these issues.
Absolutely.
What advice would you give to someone who maybe is listening to this and thinking this sounds fascinating?
I would say go for it.
I want to learn more about this. I want to have a career in plant pathology.
It is a fascinating field. It's incredibly rewarding. You get to be at the forefront of scientific discovery, and you're making a real difference in the world.
Right, because you really are impacting
Like you're impacting global food security.
Global food security.
The health of the planet.
Yeah.
It's really important work.
That's incredible. So it sounds incredibly rewarding.
It is.
But also intellectually stimulating.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're constantly learning. You're constantly challenged. You're collaborating with experts from all different backgrounds. It's a very collaborative field.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's great that there are people out there like you who are so passionate about this and are
I love it.
Working so hard to protect our food supply.
I'm glad to hear that it comes across.
On our planet.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not about eliminating them completely.
Okay.
It's more about being really strategic in how and when we use them. So thinking about targeted applications only when absolutely necessary, and looking for those chemical treatments that had the least impact on the environment and human health.
Right. So it's all about kind of like minimizing the harm while maximizing the effectiveness.
You got it.
That's great. So we've talked about how, these advances are important for obviously protecting crops and, the agricultural industry, but how did these advances in plant pathology really impact, the average person who's listening to this?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that this impacts everyone who eats.
That's true.
Because ultimately, these advances aren't just about saving crops. They're about making sure that we, as a global population, have enough food.
Right. And that's affordable, too.
Exactly. And that it's safe to eat.
Right. Because we take it for granted, I think, a lot of times, just how complicated the food supply chain is.
Absolutely.
And how easily it can be disrupted.
Right. And how those disruptions can really have far-reaching consequences.
Absolutely.
Speaking of far-reaching consequences, the article also mentions something called disease forecasting.
Oh, yeah. That's a really cool concept.
Yeah. What is that?
So it's basically like a weather forecast, but for plant diseases.
Okay, so how does that work?
So scientists are using things like data analytics, even artificial intelligence and machine learning to predict when and where disease outbreaks might occur.
Wow.
And they're looking at things like weather patterns, soil conditions, historical data. All of that is factored in to create these forecasts. So they can literally say, like, next month, watch out for blight.
Exactly. They can give farmers a heads up.
Wow, that's incredible.
Which allows them to take preventative measures, which is always more effective than trying to react after a disease has already taken hold.
Right, you're not playing catch up at that point.
Exactly. You're staying one step ahead of those pathogens.
I like it. What other advances in this research did you find particularly interesting?
Let's see. Well, one area that I think is particularly fascinating is the use of nanotechnology in plant pathology.
Nanotechnology. So we're talking like really, really tiny technology.
We're talking really, really tiny technology.
Like microscopic robots fighting off microscopic bugs.
It does sound kind of like science fiction, doesn't it?
It really does.
But it's becoming a reality.
Wow. So
scientists are developing these incredibly small, nano-sized sensors that can actually be applied to plants or even put into the soil to detect pathogens in real time.
Wow. So they're like little spies for us.
They're like tiny little guardians, constantly monitoring the plants for any sign of trouble.
And because they're so small, they're basically invisible.
Essentially visible to the naked eye.
That's incredible.
And the really cool thing is that they can transmit data wirelessly.
Oh.
So farmers could potentially get an alert on their phone.
Wow.
The very moment a disease is detected in their field.
That's incredible.
It's like next level early detection.
It really is. That's amazing. And I mean, it's not just about detection either, right?
No, you're right.
You said that they're also using nanotechnology to actually deliver treatments as well.
Exactly. So, for example, researchers are working on these microscopic capsules that contain things like fungicides.
Okay.
And these capsules are designed to release their contents only when they come into contact with a specific pathogen.
Wow, so they're like tiny little smart bombs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're like targeted missile systems for plant diseases.
That's amazing. This is really incredible stuff, but I imagine there must be challenges.
Oh, of course.
In developing this type of technology.
As with any new technology, there are always challenges to overcome.
Right, especially when you're talking about something as potentially impactful as, nanotechnology.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest challenges is making sure that these nanomaterials are safe.
Right.
For both human health and the environment.
Right, because we don't want to solve one problem and then create a new one in the process.
Exactly. We don't want any unintended consequences.
Right.
So a lot of the research in this area is focusing on developing what are called biodegradable nanomaterials.
Okay, what does that mean?
So these are materials that are designed to break down naturally in the environment.
Okay.
After they've done their job.
So they don't stick around and potentially cause problems down the road.
Exactly. They're designed to have a minimal environmental footprint.
That's good to know that that is something that researchers are considering.
Oh, absolutely. It's a top priority in nanotechnology research.
Okay. Are there any other challenges that are kind of facing the field of plant pathology more broadly?
Well, one of the biggest challenges in this field is just the incredible diversity and adaptability of plant pathogens.
Yeah, because they're constantly evolving, right?
They're constantly evolving. They're like master mutators, always finding new ways to get around our defenses and spread to new areas.
So it's like a constant back and forth.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's like an arms race between scientists and these microscopic invaders.
Wow.
We're constantly trying to stay one step ahead.
To protect our food supply.
Exactly, because the stakes are so high.
It sounds like it's a really fascinating field, though.
Oh, it absolutely is.
Because there's always something new to learn and new challenges to tackle.
Exactly, and that's what makes it so exciting.
It sounds like we need more people going into this field.
We absolutely do. We need all the bright minds we can get.
So if someone's listening to this and thinking, this sounds really interesting, what advice would you give to someone who might be interested in a career in plant pathology?
I would say go for it.
Okay.
It's a fascinating and incredibly rewarding field.
What makes it so rewarding?
Well, for one thing, you're at the forefront of scientific discovery.
Mm-hmm.
You're constantly learning and growing.
Right.
And perhaps most importantly, you're making a real difference in the world.
Right, because this has such huge implications for...
It impacts global food security, the health of our planet.
Right. You're not just, working on some tiny little niche thing.
The big deal.
This is a huge deal.
Yeah, it's really important work.
That's amazing. So it sounds like it's both intellectually stimulating.
Oh, absolutely.
But also incredibly rewarding.
It really is. There's a real sense of purpose in knowing that your work is contributing to a more sustainable and food-secure future.
Yeah, it's incredible. And it sounds like you're very passionate about it.
I absolutely love what I do, and I'm so grateful to be able to share my passion with others.
Well, we're grateful to have you here today to share your expertise with us.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk about something I care so much about.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've gone from the simplicity of crop rotation to the mind-blowing potential of nanotechnology.
It's amazing how much innovation is happening in this field.
It really is.
Yeah.
What would you say is your biggest takeaway from all of this?
For me, it's a reminder that even in the face of these huge challenges like feeding a growing global population sustainably, there's real hope. Scientists are making incredible breakthroughs all the time.
That's great.
And I truly believe that with the right knowledge, the right innovation, and a lot of collaboration, we can create a future where everyone has access to safe, nutritious, and affordable food.
And it's such important work. And, we've talked about a lot of the scientific breakthroughs and the technological advancements.
Right.
But it really does take collaboration.
It does.
Across different fields to address these challenges.
Absolutely.
Right.
We need scientists from all different disciplines working together.
Right.
We need engineers. We need policymakers.
Right.
We need farmers, obviously.
Because they're the ones who are actually implementing a lot of these strategies. It's exactly. They're on the front lines.
Right.
So it's really about bringing all of those perspectives together.
And it's great to see that there are so many people who are passionate about this and who are.
Yeah, there's a real sense of community in this field.
Working towards that common goal.
Absolutely. Everyone's working towards that goal of a more sustainable and food-secure future.
It's really inspiring.
Yeah.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today in this deep dive.
We have.
We went from something as simple as crop rotation to something as, complex and almost futuristic as nanotechnology.
It's amazing, isn't it, how much progress has been made and how much potential there is.
It really is. So as we kind of wrap up here, what would you say is your biggest takeaway from all of this?
For me, the biggest takeaway is just how hopeful I am about the future of food.
Okay.
We're facing some really big challenges as a global community.
Climate change.
Exactly, climate change. A growing population.
But despite all of that, I'm incredibly hopeful because of the incredible work that's being done in plant pathology and related fields.
So you're saying there's hope?
There's definitely hope.
Yeah.
We have the knowledge, we have the tools, and most importantly, we have the passion and the dedication to create a better future.
That's great to hear. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
It was my pleasure.
It's been really enlightening talking to you, and thank you for sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you for having me. I always enjoy talking about plant pathology.
And for you listening, we hope this deep dive into the world of plant pathology has given you a new appreciation for where your food comes from and all of the incredible work that goes into protecting it.
It's a team effort.
It really is. Until next time, stay curious.